Hey guys, Josh here, and this is Nord. So this is the newest mid-range phone from OnePlus, and one that has a lot to offer considering the price of the phone, but it does have a few compromises. First off, let's look at the display. It's a 6.4-inch 1080p OLED display, so it actually has the same resolution as the OnePlus 8, albeit with a slightly smaller screen. And of course, you get that 90Hz refresh rate, and it's really smooth. It's been a while since I used a phone with a high refresh rate, and it's just so much better when scrolling through web pages and menus. There is some slight color shifting or rainbowing when viewing this screen at an angle, but nothing that would affect regular use when looking directly at the screen. So it's not the best screen that we've seen on a smartphone, but still really good. There's also a camera cutout on the top left for the dual selfie cameras. I actually prefer having a camera cutout like this rather than a notch. It just seems to be less noticeable when watching videos in full screen, but let me know what you guys think about that in the comments below the video. Next up is the design. So the color that they sent me is blue marble, but it also comes in gray onyx if you want something a little bit less flashy. But I really like this color, especially with the all glass back and the gloss finish. It looks really good. I feel like a lot of phones are going with the frosted glass on the back, which looks great too, but I just like how this stands out. And of course we have that quad camera setup on the back, which we will get to in just a minute. The frame around the phone looks like metal, but it's not, it's plastic. So OnePlus was definitely cutting costs in that area, but it still looks clean and it feels good in the hand, so I have no problem with it. On the one side, we get the volume up and down buttons, and on the other side, just a power button and the slider to toggle between ring, vibrate, and silent modes. Moving to the top, there is a single mic hole, and on the bottom, we get that SIM card slot that does support 2 SIM cards. The main microphone, a USB-C port, and a single downward-facing speaker. The speaker doesn't sound great, and I find that I accidentally cover it up sometimes when watching videos and playing games. If you're a headphone user like me, this probably won't bother you too much, but it's still something to consider. Now let's talk about the cameras. On the back, we get that quad camera setup with a 48 megapixel main camera, an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 5 megapixel depth sensor. You can definitely get some good photos with the main camera, but at times it can be slightly oversaturated, and other times it just completely crushes the shadows. In well-lit areas outdoors, it can take some really high quality shots with a ton of detail. You can see if I crop into this photo of the OnePlus Nord box, there is still a ton of detail. Focus is good and the colors are perfect. Then in this photo of my truck, again, really good detail, colors are accurate, and then again with this one of the sign. Even indoors, as long as you have a lot of light, it still performs really well, even if there is a small amount of noise in the background. It struggles a bit when you are in lower light situations, but so do most phones. You can see the difference with this photo of my hat in low light versus a well-lit condition. The one on the right just loses a lot of detail and it looks really soft. The colors are also a little bit off too. Portrait mode works really well too, even if it does occasionally confuse part of the subject with the background and blur it out. And you also have the option for 2x zoom, which is just digital zoom, not optical zoom. So you're going to lose some quality when using that, but overall it works really well. Then we have that 8 megapixel ultra wide camera, and this one tends to struggle sometimes. You can still get some great photos with this one as long as you have a lot of light to work with, but when you crop in, you can see some parts of the image are just blurred out, especially around the edges. And in lower light conditions, it really just falls apart. You can see the difference in detail between these two photos when we crop in. The first one was taken with the 48 megapixel main camera and the second with the ultra wide. This one of the sign was actually not bad though. It still kept a lot of detail on the subject and the colors are accurate. Losing some detail around the edges and in the grass, but overall I think a good photo. But going back to another low light shot, most of the image is blurry, the shadows in the trees are just crushed, and nothing really seems to be in focus. And last and definitely least is the 2 megapixel macro camera. It takes low res macro photos and nothing ever really seems to be in focus. The colors are also not good. You're better off to just take photos using the main camera and crop in. I think it would have been much better to just have a triple camera setup on the back and use the money saved on that to improve something else. Then on the front, we have that dual selfie camera cutout. So there is a 32 megapixel main camera and an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle. And so far, I'm really impressed with these. The photos have a lot of detail and good color accuracy. You do lose some detail again with the ultra wide because just like the one on the back, it's only an 8 megapixel sensor, but still very good. They do struggle in some lighting conditions, but overall, really good quality front cameras. You can shoot 1080p video in either 30 or 60 FPS and 4K video at 30 FPS in standard or cine mode. The cine mode just gives you that 21:9 wide angle film kind of a look. Videos look good and the optical image stabilization works really well. I also did some testing with slow motion and it's not bad. It can be pretty noisy, but overall I think a good result. Now let's talk about performance. So the model that I have here comes with 12 gigabytes of RAM, the Snapdragon 765G processor, and 256 gigabytes of solid state storage. Now benchmarks don't always tell the whole story, but just to get this out of the way, on Geekbench 5 it scored a 615 on the single core and a 1960 when running all cores. So you can see not quite flagship level, but still good scores. And if you compare this to even a low-end iPhone like the 2nd gen iPhone SE, it would look really underpowered, but specs are not everything. Opening and closing apps is really fast. I did notice that some apps like the camera and some games do take a bit longer to load, but still really solid. And when doing basic tasks like scrolling through feeds and web pages, it's really smooth, especially with that 90 Hz display. Gaming is also really good and it rarely dropped below 60 FPS no matter what game I was playing. I don't think there's support yet for 90 FPS on the Nord because no matter what setting I used, I seem to be capped at 60 FPS, even when I was selecting uncapped or extreme frame rate options. It's understandable since they are running that lower tier chip in the Nord, but I still wish that I had the option to play games at that higher frame rate. You also have game mode and fanatic mode, which basically just optimize some settings to improve graphics while gaming. So if you have any specific games that you want me to test out, just drop a comment down below, and as long as they're free, I'll try them out and let you know how they perform. So overall, for a phone that's running that lower tier chip, it actually has really solid performance. And a lot of that has to do with Oxygen OS. I don't think it's really talked about enough just how nice the software experience is on the OnePlus phones. There's not a lot of bloatware like you get on a lot of other Android smartphones, and it's still the closest thing to stock Android that I've used. So it's based off of Android 10, and you get dark mode and all kinds of customization options for things like icon shapes and fingerprint animations. And OnePlus has even promised that the Nord will get 2 years of software updates and 3 years of security updates. So you should have no problem using this as your daily phone for at least a couple of years. The OnePlus Nord is also 5G ready, so if you live somewhere where 5G is available, that would be a huge plus for you. Unfortunately, I don't live in one of those areas, but I did do some testing with calling and using mobile data anyway. So phone calls came in very clear and I didn't have any issues with dropped calls or cutting out, even when calling from indoors. And I always had a stable 4G or LTE connection, so browsing on mobile data was really good. You also get OnePlus's fast charging on the Nord. It's that Warp Charge 30T that we've seen on a few other phones. And you can go from 0 to 70% in just 30 minutes, and it takes just under an hour to reach a full charge. And it is a 4115 milliamp hour battery, so you should have no problem getting through the day. I usually finish the day around 10 to 20%, and that's with about 6 hours of screen on time at full brightness. As far as the price goes, the OnePlus Nord will be in the $400 to $500 range when it comes to North America. That is of course in the US. If you're in Canada like I am, that's more like $500 to $650. So the question is, should you buy one? Like I said at the beginning, the Nord does have a few drawbacks, like it's only a 1080p screen, it does have that lower tier chip, no Wi-Fi 6, no wireless charging, plastic rails on the side, no IP rating for water resistance, and a few cameras that are a bit disappointing. But for the price, I still think this is a great deal. It has at least 2 dependable cameras, a really smooth 90 Hz display along with Oxygen OS, good performance, a great design, and excellent battery life with ultra-fast charging. For me, that checks all the boxes for a mid-ranger, and I would have no problem using this as my daily phone for a couple of years. And that wraps it up. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to smash that like button, and if you want to see more videos like this, then go ahead and subscribe to the channel. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.